Hi, thank you for providing me your idea about analysis of interpreting strategy from the perspective of game theory. Your idea is very interesting because you want to know the interaction between interpreter and consumers who are consuming that interpreted document, like the client, speaker, target audience, and other interpreters and critics on the other side. So it's and you seems to see that there is some kind of uh, tensions or interaction between interpreter and the other side. Well, that's fine. That's fine. That's very interesting. And the goal is all player would benefit at the end of this game. Okay. And and but in reality, the games between interpreter auto player may be played at the same time and have a multiple influence on each other. So you said there are some kind of interaction between these people. Okay, every player involved in interpreting activities is rational. Okay, fine. And for they all seek to play in a manner that maximize their own utility. Okay, they find you said they are selfish and rational. Usually, the interpreter strives to make his or her proposal come true at the cost of a certain compromise to other players. So, interpreter just try to make some interpretation which is compromising to other players. Okay, I'm not following too much because I want to see the exact figures on the way of um, influencing or interacting with others. That will um, make it clear. So, but if some interpreter care only about their own utility, in some situation, game would be interrupted and can hardly move on. Okay, so it's like there are some kind of tensions. I mean, some interpreter cares only about their own utility, and some cares about overall utility, which is compromising to other players. I think that's the key point or key main idea in your main idea. So the goal is all players would benefit at the end of this game. Just a quick question is that the goal of who? I mean, whose goal is talking about? Because some player who is counting about his own utility will care about his own utility. And the interpreter who's counting about, I mean, overall utility will care about overall utility at the end of the day. So this goal is kind of, I think, your goal. Or maybe if there is an association, interpreter association, then this goal is the goal of that association. So that association's goal, or maybe social planner's goal, or maybe your goal is that all players would benefit and at the end of these games. Okay, so okay, that's fine. I mean, the first thing I'd like to tell you is that actually, there is a game called, there is a game dealing with this situation. That is called a communication game. Communication game. I mean, in a very formal manner. So if you really interested in dealing with in a very formal sense, then you need to search a communication game. Maybe there is a guy who is very good at in this field. The guy's Professor Andrew Bloom. Um, he's German and he's a professor in University of Arizona. So that is his homepage. So if we go to his homepage, this is the Andrea Bloom, and he's dealing with, look at this. I mean, if we look at his publications, then look at this. This is not about that. Failure, come on, look at this. failure of common knowledge of language in common interest communication games, pre-play communication game with foregone costly messages, experimental evidence on forward induction, coordination with decentralized costly communication. He's mainly focusing on, some communication between sender and receiver. So if you look at here, the class of strategy correlated equilibria in sender-receiver games. Sender can be a kind of interpreter, and receiver can be some kind of other players you are interested in, other interpreters, or maybe client and some kind of a scholar group, or maybe noisy talk, an equilibrium, multi-unit weak reaction. This is not about that. This is not about that. So if you really interested in and if you want to develop this idea in a very academic sense, in a very formal sense, actually you may need to refer to this communication game. Okay. However, well, in another sense, this group of game is very, very complicated in a mathematical sense. So the too complicate, in this sense, maybe it won't be helpful to follow these types of communication game. That is too complicated. So in one sense, maybe you may need to refer to the way of building up the model, because basically Professor Andrea Bloom is talking about the basic relationship between the sender, who is sending a message, or in your model, it's like, who is sending, how to how to interpret the document or things, to the players, to the other players. He's dealing with that kind of things. So that would be that the first thought. But the second shot, or maybe on the other hand, well, that is too complicated. So if you dive into that idea, that's too difficult. So that, well, I mean, that's fine just to look at the way of building a model, but I recommend you make a very simple model. I mean, um, which is manageable for you. So, in that sense, I can say this. Okay, maybe if we make a model with game theory, we need to elaborate three factors or three things. First one is the players and strategies, and payouts. And you said that this is a kind of simultaneous game, so we can make a model in a sense of a normal form game. Okay, and you already clarified players, interpreter, and other players. Okay, that's fine. What are the strategies? Maybe they can choose between. So one thing is not clear to me what kind of action they can choose. For example, as an interpreter, maybe interpreting 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 precisely, or I'm talking about the strategy or action that an interpreter can choose, or maybe um, interpreting moderately, compromising, compromising to other. It should be lower character to other players. So it means like interpreter can interpret things moderately, compromising to other players. So instead of providing very good level of interpreting, maybe the interpreter can choose a moderate level of interpreting. I mean, even though he or she can do that better. I mean, if he or she make a better interpretation, I mean, she or he uh, can be, she or he is okay, but other interpreter cannot be, other interpreter who cannot make a better interpretation may be kicked out of from the market, that it result in killing some other interpreters. I don't know. Maybe you need to make a stories about the actions, what they can choose in this situation. If they choose that one, what's the result for them? Okay? I mean, if they choosing, think about this way. Maybe there are two interpreter, interpreter one and interpreter two. Interpreter two. Okay? There are two interpreters. Maybe they can choose between interpreting precisely, or maybe they can, what it means, they can choose the level of interpreting, the quality of the document. Maybe the low quality, or maybe the middle quality, or high quality. This is just one example based on what I understand, what I understood. I mean, the high level of interpretation, or maybe middle level or interpretation. Okay? And if we both choose the higher level interpretations, man, well, that would be good for the consumers if there is another player, consumers, then it will be good for the consumers, but it will be bad for the interpreters. For example, if both choose middle level, that will be bad for the consumers, but that will be good for the interpreters. If one guy is choosing high level of interpretation, and other guy is choosing the middle level of interpretations, then, well, the consumer is fine because I mean the consumer will pick up the high interpreters, high level. I mean the interpreters giving high level of document, but the middle level of interpreter will die. I mean, will be killed in the market. So, I mean, you need to elaborate the story more um, to the level of making a model. So please clarify what are the players and strategies and what the payoff if they choose that actions. Okay, then I think it will be very interesting topics for you. Okay, so I'm stopping here.